Welcome back to WordPress Widgets Front to Back. In this screencast, we're going to take a look at setting up CodeKit to manage our less files and to provide JSLinting capabilities for our JavaScript files. Open your web browser, navigate to incident57.com/CodeKit. It is a paid application, but there is a trial, so I recommend downloading that if you haven't already bought CodeKit. If you browse to the site, you'll notice that there are a lot of features, some of which are out of scope for this particular course. However, we will be taking advantage of a number of things that it offers. So once it's downloaded, you can install it using the usual Mac application installation procedure. And once it's done, you should be able to launch it using Spotlight or your applications directory. So I'm going to launch CodeKit. In initial startup, you'll see that there are no files, but you'll see a log, style, scripts, pages, and images. Some of these we'll get more familiar with as the project goes on. The first thing that we need to do is to inform CodeKit about our project. So to do that, locate the plus button in the bottom corner of the application and click Add Project. Next, locate your www directory, which is where we have been working with WordPress throughout this course so far. Locate the WP content directory, the plugins directory, and then the front to back directory, and click on Add. Here, you'll notice that CodeKit has detected our plugin PHP file, the less files, and the JS files. Now, there's a few things that we need to do to configure CodeKit. To do so, click on the CodeKit menu, and then click on Preferences. Most of these settings are okay to leave as is. I'm okay with showing the app in the dock. As far as refreshing the project, I actually like to move it down to about every 2 minutes. And what this will do will basically review all of the files that exist in your project and will add them to the project automatically. So for example, if you add a new less file and then you begin editing it, during the span of 2 minutes, CodeKit will automatically pick up on it and then begin managing it from within the application. For auto reload browsers, this is actually somewhat of an annoying feature in my opinion, because what happens is while you're writing code, it will automatically refresh the browser and then bring it to the front rather than leaving it behind your IDE. So I'll uncheck both of these options. As far as injecting CSS changes without a full page reload, the animations and the cache buster for full page reloads, you can leave these checked. However, we're going to be manually refreshing the page, so it doesn't really matter for our purposes. The last set of options, I do think it's important to bring CodeKit to the front when there's an error. That way you're kind of prompted to fix it as soon as you notice it. If notifications are checked, then this will take advantage of the OS 10's notifications window and let you know when less files have been successfully compressed or compiled. And this will also let you know when JavaScript files have been successfully minified or successfully linted, or if there are errors. And then if you want to check for updates at launch, which is always a good idea, I think it's okay to leave this checked. Next, click on the Languages tab. Now from here, there's a lot of different options. We're primarily concerned with less and JavaScript, so that's what we're going to talk about. First, make sure that less is selected and make sure that the language options are selected. Next, for the output style, we'll select minified. For the debug info, we're not really worried about that, at least for this course, so we'll leave it at none. And then we're not going to worry about strict imports in this course. Here, for the initial settings shared by all style sheet languages, you can run bless on the generated CSS file if you like. This is primarily relevant to writing a lot of styles that will run in older versions of Internet Explorer. We won't be hitting that limit in this course, so I'm going to leave this unchecked, although I do recommend checking out the README file and getting more familiar with bless, as it's useful, especially when you're working on larger projects. For the compiler settings, I recommend using CodeKit's internal less compiler. Next, click on Output Paths. Now for the output paths, open Coda, and recall that we placed all of our less files in a less subdirectory in the CSS directory. And so what we want to do is write out the CSS files in the root of the CSS directory. To do this, we need to tell CodeKit that we want to write out the paths in the directory above where the less files are kept. CodeKit will automatically save the settings. There's no save button, so now we can hop down to JavaScript. Make sure that the language options are selected. Next, we can then say check syntax with JSLint or JSHint. Now, JSLint is a project managed by Douglas Crockford, who is more or less the authority on JavaScript. He's specifically the JavaScript evangelist at Yahoo. JSLint is written by him and maintained by him and includes some very strict rules. JSLint is an open source fork of JSLint. It has a little bit more relaxed rules. I'm a fan of JSLint, and so that's what we'll be using throughout this course. But if you're comfortable with linting or you're familiar with linting, feel free to use whatever linter, that is JSLint or JSLint, that you like. Next, we can select to concatenate and minify our files. And then to create the output files with this suffix, we would actually like to use .min to say, and that indicates that it's a minified JavaScript file. As far as the output path is concerned, we want to follow the same convention that we did for the CSS files. So what we'll do is we'll select to this path and we'll put .. This will tell CodeKit to minify the JavaScript files and place them in the root of the JavaScript directory. Next, click on minifiers. Anything and everything on this screen can be left as is. So next, click on syntax lints. Make sure that in your options that JSLint is selected if it's not. For the custom globals, we want to define a list of several things that JSLint will ignore. For example, we want it to ignore the jQuery function. We want it to ignore the long-form jQuery function. And I also like to have it ignore the console message. And here's why. JSLint is very strict in the rules that it enforces. So if it notices us using things like the dollar function, the long-form jQuery function, or the console object, then it will trigger an error because those are not defined within the context of the JavaScript files that we're writing. In order to mitigate that, we can treat them as custom globals, and then JSLint will ignore them. Next, let's look at the relaxing options. For the most part, we'll be able to leave these exactly as they are. I typically like to use ++ rather than +1 in order to increment my variables. So I'm going to click ++. And I'm okay with tolerating sloppy white space. Now what this particular rule does is this. If you tab and then hit enter to go to the next line, and there's white space left above you and it's tabbed, then JSLint will throw an error because it sees a tab character that exists, but no code on that line. I'm okay with tolerating sloppy white space because at the end of the day, when the JavaScript files are minified, all of that information is going to be wiped out. Plus, it's also annoying because certain editors do not remove that white space for you. Code2 is one of those. And so that generates an error log that basically requires you to delete all of your tabs that provide white space in your source. At this point, we've completely configured CodeKit. In the next screencast, we're going to survey the WordPress Widgets API so that we get familiar with what's required to write our WordPress widget. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you there.